Welcome back from the rest hold, everyone. It's time for us to get into our main event for this evening, Fantasy Booking SummerSlam 2015. If you don't know what Fantasy Booking is, let me give you a quick rundown. Fantasy Booking is essentially us taking whatever the current subject matter is and deciding what would we do if we had creative control. Since this is a pay-per-view, it's going to be breaking down what the card would be and what matches we would book for it. And a little bit of the constraints that we have, I try to keep it so where it's reasonable, but it's, you can't just go crazy. Obviously, you can't book people that aren't in the company. You can't book people that are retired or obviously dead. You can't also go so crazy where you would just add like 30 people from NXT onto the main roster. WWE never does that. The most we've ever seen has been the most recent thing with the Divas. And you got to kind of take that into consideration. And also the time frame of when you can go back and rebook things. For SummerSlam, this one, I figured an easy way to do that would be the night after WrestleMania from this year. So you'd be looking at Seth Rollins as the champion going forward, unless you were to change that in some way. And you can change champions, you can change baby faces and heels, you can give pushes to people, lots of different stuff. You got to just kind of explain it if it's something a little bit different. And essentially, what would you do with the 4 hours that you're given, the 5 hours, actually, that you're given for SummerSlam 2015? Anybody want to go first, or do you guys want me to go first? It's up to you.
You do it.
You can go first, Tony.
Alrighty, fine. I'll go first then. I tried to make myself have a little bit less room to rebook things too. So I kept some things exactly the same as what they're going for, and tried not to change all that much. But my pre-show match is going to be King Barrett versus Big Show versus The Miz. Essentially, it's sort of the same as what the feud we're getting with Ryback is right now, but instead of it being for the Intercontinental title and having Ryback involved, it's going to be more of a bragging right situation. King Barrett is somebody who, he is king of the ring. I like that idea. But he's also a babyface. I think that one of the biggest mistakes WWE's done this year is not running with Bad News Barrett being a face. And that's kind of halted his momentum quite a bit. So in this scenario, Barrett is a babyface, and he's fighting Big Show and Miz because Big Show thinks, King Barrett, what the hell, you're not a king of the ring. I'm the fucking giant. I'm the king when it comes to this. I even won the goddamn Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I threw all these people out. I'm the true king of the ring. Miz, on the other hand, is sitting there going, no. King of the ring doesn't matter. Andre the Giant Battle Royal doesn't matter. I'm the friggin' celebrity. Nobody else is doing the movies. Nobody else has got this exposure. If there's anybody who's a king in WWE, it's me. So that's essentially your breakdown for that kind of a match. It's on the pre-show. It's not the most important thing in the world. And probably I'd end up giving this to The Miz. Just some kind of cheating thing. Barrett knocks out Big Show, looks pretty strong, but Miz gets a roll-up or some crap like that. We don't need to break down exactly what happens in every match and stuff. And moves on to the show itself, and you're going to start off with a mixed tag match. Dolph Ziggler and Lana against Rusev and Summer Rae. I like what they're doing here, and I like the idea of Rusev kind of fighting over Lana and bringing Summer Rae in to get her jealous and stuff. Maybe I wouldn't have thought about the whole fish throwing thing, but I like that too. I think that this is pretty much exactly what we should be getting around this time, so my only tweak is to make it a mixed tag match, and that over the past couple of months, hopefully Lana would have learned how to wrestle pretty well, and that you don't have to worry about her performing in the ring against Summer Rae, but even if she's not the best, you have Ziggler and Rusev that you can back it up. Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton is the next match. A little backstory behind this. You guys should know by now, I do not like the idea of Sheamus being the Mr. Money in the Bank, so he doesn't win it. Kevin Owens wins Money in the Bank. And that means that he wouldn't have had this feud with John Cena the same way that they did it. I like the John Cena feud that they did at first, but I think that, and I said this last time around, that this whole idea of them building him up and then he just loses to Cena for the next 2 matches and all that, it pisses me off. And if they weren't going to give him the US title, don't have him continue feuding with them and everything. Just have him beat Cena once, get a real big cocky streak about himself, then he wins Money in the Bank, and it's like, now I'm even going to be somebody who could be the champion. So who does he feud with? The Legend Killer. Orton's a little bit pissed. He used to be the guy that was taking names and kicking ass and stuff. And now Kevin Owens is pretty much the apex predator. He's knocking everybody out. He's taking people out of commission. He's got Money in the Bank. Randy Orton and Owens feud over that, essentially. And I'm going to spoil a little bit for if I still have the same mentality when it comes to rebooking WrestleMania next year. You have Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose in the main event of WrestleMania. Either Roman Reigns or Dean Ambrose wins. Who's the one that beats them later on in 2016? Kevin Owens. Money in the Bank. We move on to the Tag Team Championship. Lucha Dragons not defend. They get a title shot against the New Day. I've said before, New Day should not be losing those titles, and I wouldn't have had them lose it here either, because Lucha Dragons are kind of cool, but New Day's awesome. And I like the idea of them keeping the titles for as long as possible. Lucha Dragons should have been built up more, so they're proper contenders and all that other kind of stuff. Move on to Ryback and Sheamus. Ryback doesn't like bullies. Sheamus is a bully. There you go. That's all you really need to know. Nikki Bella defends the Divas Championship against Charlotte. I like what they're doing right now, but a couple tweaks along the way. I think that it's a mistake that they're doing a team match at SummerSlam, because you could do this for Survivor Series much, much better. So, building up around this, Nikki Bella and Charlotte are facing each other, and Nikki ends up winning because somebody wants to help her out, starting this whole like Team Bella versus other people kind of a thing. And who's helping her out on this that screws Charlotte out of it? Sasha Banks. There you go. You have, for Survivor Series later on in the year, instead of Team Bad versus Team Bella versus the other team that they're not giving a name to yet for some reason, you just have it split 50-50. And the Bella Twins team, whatever that would end up being called, you got Nikki, Brie, Sasha Banks, Naomi, and either Tamina or Cameron against the babyfaces, which are Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Paige, Alicia Fox, and Natalya. That's where we would be building. Wyatt family versus Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and either Sting or The Undertaker. You can't have both, and I think that it's a mistake to have both on the card too, because I'll get into somebody else that's pretty big a little bit later on, but I'm sort of working under the assumption that Eric Rowan is still injured. You don't necessarily have to have him injured in this, because you never know if he would have gotten injured or not. And if he is injured, then I think his replacement's Adam Rose. And you make him the character that I mentioned a couple weeks ago, sort of like a crazy jackal. And he offsets the crazy Dean Ambrose. And you have either Sting or Undertaker take that, like, I'm the dark side kind of a mentality behind it. And they counteract Bray Wyatt a little bit. Roman Reigns gets a little bit of a rub because he's probably the one who would get the pin. You know, it sort of writes itself. Then we have one of the weirdest things, I guess I could say, on my card, title unification. United States Champion John Cena against the Intercontinental Champion Cesaro. Not as big on Cesaro as a lot of people tend to be, but I think him holding the IC title would be kind of cool. And I've said before, I like the idea of having just the one mid-card champion and sort of making the belt a little bit like the WWE World Title belt, where the side plates can change. Have the Intercontinental Championship. It's not the United States Championship, even though John Cena would win this. But the Intercontinental Championship has side plates to change off of who is owning the title at the time and their respective country that they're from. So John Cena is the Intercontinental Champion, something which we haven't seen before. Technically, even though it's not the official title for it, he'd be the Intercontinental American Champion. And you have the American flag. If, like, Sheamus were to win it down the line, he'd have the Irish flag. If Cesaro were to win, it'd be Swiss. I think that's a good way for you to get WWE shop people to want to buy that and represent their country. And you can even send the Intercontinental title to people that win, like, say, the World Cup. Here's an Intercontinental title with that country in there. That'd be kind of cool, I think. And I sort of don't like the idea of the U.S. title and the Intercontinental title at the same time. Bugs me a little bit. And who's better to hold it than John Cena? And we have Stardust versus Neville with Stephen Amell as a special guest. I like superheroes. I like where they're going with this. Very cool. The only thing that I would have done, and this is like if I had full control, I like Cody Rhodes better than Stardust, but he wanted to keep the Stardust character, so I'd probably just be like, okay, I wouldn't force him into it. So my idea of Cody Rhodes getting like some main event push wouldn't have happened anyway. So Stardust versus Neville, cool. I like superheroes. Finally, the last match on the card, the world title match, Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar, would not happen at Battleground. I think it's too big for Battleground, and of course that also means Undertaker does not interfere here. There's no Undertaker and Lesnar match happening at Night of Champions to follow this up with. None of that. Rollins just figures out a way to beat Brock Lesnar. And at the next pay-per-view, the Night of Champions thing, he has been so adamant that, well, I even beat fucking Brock Lesnar, that it pisses Triple H off, and you get Triple H and Seth Rollins. That what I would rather do, instead of Night of Champions, Breaking Point. That's my card. I've talked a little bit too much here, so I'm going to pass this along to whoever wants to go next. What do you have for fantasy booking?
I'll tag in. So, for an opening match, I'd actually do a big babyface versus babyface match. I think the perfect position for a guy like Randy Orton right now is putting over your upper mid-card talent who you think's got a future. So I'd have him win some type of battle royal and take on the current Intercontinental Champion, Ryback. Because, let's face it, Daniel Bryan's fucked. He was getting injured no matter what. So I'd have Randy Orton and Ryback duke it out, and you can have the Feed Me More chants going all match. You can have people get popping for the RKO. It's just a solid opening match, and I'd have Ryback win. Next, I have my first of 2 Divas matches. So I actually really like the NXT Invasion, but I would have done it a little differently. I would have had Paige lead the NXT Divas, Charlotte, Becky, and Sasha against one team of the Bella Twins, Naomi, and Tamina. So with that, you can have some type of six-woman tag match in this, and I'd have Sasha get the pin because I want to make her look strong out of them. And that'll lead into a Divas Championship match later on in the night, which I'll get to after what I'd put on next, which is the WWE Tag Team title match. I don't like any of the teams that we currently have right now. I would have kept the belts on Cesaro and Tyson Kidd, and I would have just trotted the New Age Outlaws out of there just for them to have a face team to beat, because I would have kept them heel personally. Next, I have the Divas Championship match, and I'd actually do Paige versus Nikki Bella. I'd have those two as the team leaders, so they duke it out for the title. Paige wins, and with that, her faction comes out and all celebrates with them. They're all ready to leave the ring, and quickly Sasha spins Paige rounds, lays her out, and bails out of the ring, setting up Paige's first opponent.
Which is Bayley.
So next I have the John Cena versus Kevin Owens feud. I like this feud. I think it could have been dragged out longer, and I think they jumped the shark on a couple of things. That first match, I wouldn't have changed a damn thing how it went down the Elimination Chamber. It was perfect. I would have had both men compete in the Money in the Bank ladder match, and Owens won that, so he has somewhat of another win over John Cena. I'd have the feud get a little personal with attacks on each other. Cena costs Owens the NXT title at TakeOver, and when it comes for Owens versus Cena 2 at Battleground, Owens wins. And then it all leads up to tonight, SummerSlam, Owens versus Cena, 3 stages of hell for whatever gimmicks you want in there. And I have John Cena reclaim the title and finally beat Owens, who's had his number through this entire feud. That way, the belt stays on Cena because I think he can do more with it, and Kevin Owens still looks strong as hell with back-to-back wins. I think Stardust definitely deserves the spot against Stephen Amell, and I'd like to see the singles match against them, but personally I don't like celebrities looking too strong in matches, so I'd have him pretty much dominate Stephen Amell from the get-go outside of a couple of hope spots. Somewhere along the lines, a ref bump gets involved, and you have Neville come out, who's got his ongoing feud with Stardust, use the Red Arrow on a down Stardust, drape Amell's broken body over him, and there you go. You've got your celebrity win, and Stardust still looks strong. For my co-main event of the evening, I have The Shield and Sting versus the Wyatt family. I like that the Wyatt family have reunited. I hope we see Eric Rowan involved, because he's going to be involved in my match here. And I'd have Sting help out Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns to even the odds. And I'd have Sting actually get the winning fall, because we haven't seen Sting actually pin someone in WWE yet, and give somewhat of an endorsement to Roman Reigns, without him being like seeming really forceful like The Rock did at Royal Rumble. So that leads to the main event, and that's Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar. Same thing plays out. Seth got the title at WrestleMania 31. Lesnar gets suspended the next night because of F5 in that one dude and the announcers and everything. Rollins defends the title, hangs on cowardly against opponent after opponent. His ego isolates himself from the Authority. They don't want anything to do with him. And he's finally stuck with Brock Lesnar one-on-one. And Lesnar flattens him, because Lesnar should. Lesnar is your new WWE champion. And just as he's celebrating in the ring with whatever little celebrating he does, Kevin Owens comes out, cashes in Money in the Bank, beats Lesnar after a lot of resistance from Lesnar, and when it's all said and done, on the stage of SummerSlam, the Authority pose with Owens, their new boy.
Alrighty, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So for my pre-show match, I've decided to do Neville versus King Bad News, not King Barrett, because that's fucking stupid. Bad News Barrett was awesome, so I'm going to call him King Bad News. And the reason why I'm going to do this is they had their little feud in April and the May. I'll just continue it over the next few months, each one gaining a win over the other. And just, this will be a good match just to get the crowd into it. I wouldn't have much these two could do other than this, but hey, this is the starting point. So when I go into the main card, my opening match is going to be the WWE Tag Team Championship match. I'm going to do a championship scramble here, or I have it written down as Scrabble for some reason, but it's a scramble match, I promise you. But the reason why I'm going to do a scramble match is over the past few months, a new team has won championships. The New Day wins it off of the Brass Ring Club, as they're known as. The Lucha Dragon wins against the New Day the next month. The Brass Ring Club win it back. Just a number of teams just wins the tag team titles. Hell, even Enzo Amore and Kale Cassidy somehow wins it. They won't even know. No one knows how. But I'm going to have the New Day, the Lucha Dragons, the Brass Ring Club, Enzo and Cass, the Usos, and the Ascension. Even though one Uso's injured, I'm going to have him in the match anyways, because fuck you, Tony, that's why. So anyways, my next match on the card will be Randy Orton and Stardust. And this will be Stardust comes back after Dusty Rhodes, has his little death, unfortunately, and Stardust is still doing his thing. He's not showing the emotion of losing his father, the person who he looks up to the most, and he's still doing the Stardust thing. Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes have had issues in the past, and Randy Orton at one time was Stardust or Cody Rhodes' mentor. He goes up to Cody Rhodes, or Stardust as he currently is, and tries to get him to realize that what he's doing is, not natural. He's not this super being as Stardust thinks he is. So Stardust gets upset about this, walks away, but then just viciously attacks Orton, just destroying him, which leads to their match at SummerSlam. Stardust loses, unfortunately, to Randy Orton, but the feud will continue going in the next couple of months with Cody Rhodes. Stardust eventually realizing that he is not this Stardust being, and will go back to Cody Rhodes. Up next is the WWE Intercontinental Championship match. Ryback and Sheamus, and for the same reasons as Tony, Ryback hates bullies, Sheamus is a bully, and there you go. The next match I have on the card is The Rock and Roman Reigns, and this match comes about mainly because Roman Reigns wins at the Royal Rumble with The Rock giving his endorsement. Roman Reigns loses at WrestleMania. And a lot of that build-up to that match was Roman Reigns, he's got to win or he's going to let down all these people. The Rock comes out the next night on Raw, here to support Roman Reigns, who's a little bit down in the dumps, but attacks him for reasons of he embarrassed the Samoan name. I don't even know what their fucking family name is, but he embarrasses the family name. So it sets up this match down the line. Roman Reigns injured, calls out The Rock multiple times. The Rock finally shows up and agrees to a match after just, Roman Reigns is constantly toying with him. Roman Reigns picks up the win, by the way, against The Rock. My United States Championship match is a Fatal 4-Way match between John Cena, Rusev, Dean Ambrose, and Kevin Owens. And this match comes about mainly because Kevin Owens debuts, picks up a win against John Cena. John Cena picks up a win against Kevin Owens. However, Rusev and Dean Ambrose gets in this feud because they originally had matches against John Cena. But Kevin Owens does the I'm going to attack you because I don't want anyone else to be John Cena other than myself. So during their match at was his last pay-per-view, Payback? Yeah. So at Payback, Rusev and Dean Ambrose end up coming out after the referee gets knocked out. They start brawling against Kevin Owens. Everyone gets laid out. The match ends in not a no contest, just but a double countout, so it would be a no contest actually, which sets up this match at SummerSlam with Kevin Owens finally getting the one-up on John Cena and cementing himself as the better man in that feud. My next match would be Sami Zayn and Bray Wyatt. Now, I know Sami Zayn is not on the main roster, but the reason I had this match was Sami Zayn is this cheerful guy, you know. He loves to interact with the crowd. Everyone loves Sami Zayn. Bray Wyatt sees Sami Zayn as his kind of like the Daniel Bryan of a couple years ago, where he's too cheerful. He doesn't understand that Sami Zayn is everything that Bray Wyatt really hates. And that's the premise of the feud. I think it would be an amazing thing to see, and I think these two would do some amazing things. Not only in the ring, because Bray Wyatt does this weird thing where he'll randomly have good matches with people, but I could see this feud being really good, and I kind of like it. Bray Wyatt gets the win on this night, but, you know, the face will get his one-uppance eventually, hopefully. My next match would be The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, and the reason why I'm doing this match is because what they're doing already is awesome, and I'd like to see them continue that going into SummerSlam. Just what they're doing right now on television between these two is gold. I really enjoy it, so I'm going to have these two continue feeding with each other up until SummerSlam, with Brock Lesnar picking up the win at SummerSlam. My next match is the Divas match, and I'm going to use the same teams that they also have on television right now, mainly because I like them. I like what they're doing. I was considering putting a fourth team into the mix, but it just would be too many teams, and they don't have enough people to bring up from NXT without the NXT roster being completely depleted. So I'm going to keep it with these three teams. And the Bella Twins and Alicia Fox picks up the win on this night. My main event is going to be for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and it's going to be Seth Rollins against Triple H. And I'm going to do this match now, unlike Tony, because Triple H has been putting these people in front of him, in front of Seth Rollins, to try and make Seth Rollins into a man's man. He goes through Dean Ambrose. He goes through Randy Orton, Roman Reigns. You know, he loses people, Kane and J&J Security over time, but he brings back Brock Lesnar. And yeah, Seth Rollins beats him, but he didn't beat him on his own. Is because the Undertaker kind of came back in, you know, ruined Brock Lesnar's chances of winning that match. So Triple H goes, all right, Seth, you think that you're all that. You might have gone through everyone, but you haven't gone through me. So Seth Rollins and Triple H would be the main event at SummerSlam, with Seth Rollins picking up the win. But hold on. Someone else comes out, and it's Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler does end up winning the Money in the Bank briefcase for the second time. And what I'd have him doing is I'd have him go back to his little cocky shtick. I don't know if I'd turn him heel necessarily, but I get him a lot more cocky, along the lines of a heel 2012 Dolph Ziggler, but keep him a face. Dolph Ziggler picks up steam over time. He does end up winning the Money in the Bank briefcase. And this cockiness a lot makes Dolph Ziggler want to run out there and cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase. Seth Rollins and Ziggler have a go. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for Dolph Ziggler on this night, as Seth Rollins wins this match as well. Really shows that he is the face of WWE, and he is as good as a person as Triple H wants him to be, solidifying himself as the main guy in WWE.
All right, Peyton, list up. What do you got for us?
All right, well, mine isn't as intricate or exciting. Honestly, I'm pretty bad at these things, so let's see if this one works. First off, opening match: Randy Orton versus Sheamus.
Ah, it's terrible.
Fucking hell.
Thing is, they're not even kidding. Honestly, I just didn't know what else to do with these guys, and that seems to be the feud they're doing. So, sure, that's a good place for both of these guys. Next match I would have is for the Intercontinental title: Kevin Owens versus Ryback. Kevin Owens gets tired of John Cena's shit, and he realizes that's an immovable object that he's not going to get past. So he's like, all right, well, screw that. I'll go for the IC title because he's a prize fighter. So he goes after Ryback, and are we supposed to say results?
You can if you want to. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't need to.
Yeah, because I don't really know who I would have win that one. I would have to feel how that one actually played out while they're putting it on TV and see if Kevin Owens was really worthy of putting that title on, especially after all those losses to John Cena, which I guess I could have reverted. But yeah, I think it is important to keep John Cena strong with that U.S. title, and he didn't need to be defeated by Kevin Owens so many times. Next, I would have a Scrambles match. Scrambles match.
Scrabble.
So we have a Scrabble match and a Scrambles match and the Andre the Memorial Giant or whatever the fuck I said.
Yeah.
I think he's a current.
A scramble match for the Divas title. I would have the Divas champion Nikki Bella in there. And going against her to fill out the match would be Paige, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks. I would still have Stephanie McMahon debut those three girls, but I wouldn't have them split up across all these teams, which has never really felt right yet. I mean, it's starting to get better, but it's kind of weird. I would have just had them come up, and they would have been roughly united, but they all also have their own agendas, you know? Like, they're coming up because they have a similar goal to change the Divas division, but, like, they'll still fight each other. They don't have a problem with that. And so they all fought for their chance to be a part of the Divas match at SummerSlam. And, of course, you know, Paige is a big thing you got to have in there. Nikki Bella, they're having run for this long title run, which I would continue. I would have Nikki come out of this as the champion. I don't know if people would be offended to that. Okay. So this is what I'm kind of interested in if they would ever have done. Stardust against Neville. I love this superhero versus villain thing that they're doing. I would go heavier with it. So Stardust is beating down Neville in the ring, and someone comes to the rescue. The Hurricane! But the Hurricane has been through some hard times, and people have not been appreciating him all these years. So the Hurricane has decided to turn, and he's joined Stardust on the side of evil. And you can have some real fun with that. They could make some kind of like, you know, like how villain groups always have some kind of really fun acronym name. They could do something with that. And
Strike and stuff like that. Like
Neville can recruit the Arrow in, and they could have a tag match at SummerSlam. I think that would be a really fun thing to do. And like all the title cards they've been drawing up and stuff like that. Hell, you could actually draw up a comic to go alongside with this. Be a fun way to promote the match outside of it. Next, I would have the tag title match. The New Day actually wouldn't have opponents going into this because they've just beaten everybody, and it's seeming like they're not going to have a match. Well, they're going to come out for a segment where they're gloating, saying, "Ha, we've beaten everybody there is in that locker room. There's nobody here to beat us." Or is there? Because out comes the new NXT Tag Team Champions, Enzo and Cass, who just won them the night previously at TakeOver Brooklyn. And of course, they would be pretty good contenders to come up for those WWE Tag titles, eh? And of course, they do it. Enzo and Cass winning both NXT and WWE Tag titles 2 nights consecutively in Brooklyn. Holy shit, the roof would go off the place. Next, I would have for the United States title, John Cena putting up against his most I wouldn't say his best opponent throughout this year, but perhaps Cesaro, who they've just had some amazing matches. Put them on the big stage. Give them an hour. Why not? Give them a whole hour to go out there and just have like match of the year, and that would be something great to have on your show. I would have John Cena continue as well to hold that title. Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns would be my WWE title match. I would actually have Roman Reigns have won the Money in the Bank, and he would have cashed it in ahead of time because, you know, he's a babyface. So he's saying, Seth Rollins, I'm cashing it in on you at SummerSlam. But I also would have continued all this tension Seth Rollins has been having with J&J and Kane and the Authority. So eventually it gets to such a boiling point that during this match, Seth Rollins is down and out, and he's just begging for help. So all these guys are coming out there, and he's just flipping his shit like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you doing something to help me? Get moving!" And they had enough. They start beating down Seth Rollins. They crown Roman Reigns the champion, and they raise his arms. Roman Reigns looks kind of confused, but Triple H is just like patting him on the back like, "Relax, son, we got this." And they take him to the back. Our main event, Brock Lesnar versus The Rock. The rematch from many years ago at SummerSlam in New York happens again at the return of SummerSlam to New York. These guys can obviously have talking going on between Paul Heyman and The Rock. it would be very entertaining. And I think they could have a fun 10 minutes, maybe, until eventually Roman Reigns comes out and just starts beating the shit out of The Rock. For no damn good reason. He just comes out and starts beating the shit. Like, where'd this come from? And there's all this chaos going on. The match doesn't actually end. It goes off the air with like people trying to hold Roman Reigns back from just viciously beating up The Rock. Now, filling in the blanks of what his motivation is can be taken care of later, but the long foresight of this would be to set up a match between Roman Reigns and The Rock at the following WrestleMania next year. And that's what I got.
Alright, everybody, leave your comments below. Tell us which of the cards that you prefer, and tell us what your card would be. What would you do if you got creative control from WWE and you could go back and right some of the wrongs and make your own mistakes and so on and so forth from WrestleMania onward? Let's see what happens with SummerSlam this year. Maybe we'll end up wishing that our cards came true. Maybe whatever they put on, it will be a hell of a lot better than what we decide. Who knows? But nonetheless, when that comes up, we'll be reviewing it and kind of comparing what we would have done instead. Anyway, but leave those comments. Click on the next video. We're going to be talking about the Fantasy League, so even more fantasy stuff coming up in Part 5.